two, three. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I ever get back. Oh, it's root for the Cubbies. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Hey!
This is the Monday Morning Quarterback on the 12th of March 2018. Hey, Boston Red here from WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network. This is an interesting program coming up here. We are indeed handicapping the Sunday talk shows and an interview, parts of an interview done by, let's see who did that interview, over at NBC. We have to get the personality here as to who she was with Vladimir Putin. Megyn Kelly, who used to be at Fox News. Nonetheless, I think we'll dispose of this at this point in time. Anyway, Putin, nonetheless, was blaming various people. And let's get a couple of things, dimensions straight here as to what people are called in terms. The new term for certain people, primarily Jewish people, is globalist. Now, the old term was internationalist, which all of us that are socialists or Marxists are internationalists. That was the term that we used to have. But what Putin said here, that this is a responsibility for Russian interference in the elections. We are not even Russians. Maybe they were Ukrainians, Tartars, people from the Asiatic sector of the old Soviet Union. Jews are just with Russian citizenships. Even if that needs to be checked, maybe they had dual citizenships or green cards. I didn't know they had that in the Russian Federation, but this is what Vladimir Putin gave as an answer here to it. And this is by Tiban, Amir Tiban. He is with the Haaretz, that's the military newspaper, in Israel. And we also have from Ann Coulter, you get this straight here on this rantings and ravings here, speaking of a Twitter storm targeting globalists, as she calls them. And President DJ Trump also used the term globalist. Now, this is as an anti-Semitic term. Well, there's no doubt about that. Racked up thousands of likes. She found appreciation from neo-Nazis, no doubt about that. She went on to even defame Sandy Koufax. Great Georgia is also a globalist. Well, now, how does she know Sandy Koufax is a globalist? He was a baseball player, an All-American baseball player. And Paul Newman is only half globalist. Didn't know that about Paul Newman. But anyway, boy, a lot of globalists pop up in the Me Too scandals. This is by Ann Coulter on the 9th of March 2018. These are all written on the march. You must have been drunk. Israel must be defeated as the last rebound of the globalists. I guess she let it all hang out here. Jake Tapper is half globalist. No, I'm not sure. I didn't know he was any part, quote-unquote, as she calls globalist. I mean, evidently Coulter knows. I wonder about Coulter. What is she? But anyway, this is the new term that they are throwing out here And it comes according to this. I have not read this particular book, but the Elders of Zion. I've heard about that. That was something that was written in the early 1900s in Russia at the time. It was before the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union came upon later in the ball game. But this reference here is troubling at best. The protocol of the Elders of Zion. He should clarify his comments, reminiscent of that. And that was one of the things that Hitler read there. Jonathan Greenblatt, the CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, also criticized the Russian president for his controversial statement. It is deeply troubling to see the Russian president give new life to classic anti-Semitic stereotypes that have plagued his country for hundreds of years. No doubt that goes way back to the Tsars. It's not anything new. We live in a moment when anti-Semitic violence is on the rise, and words can have profound consequences, no doubt about that. Propaganda first comes, particularly when spoken by public officials or elected officers like President Putin. This is Mr. Greenblatt here. Continue. We hope he swiftly clarifies. He won't swiftly clarify it. This is one of the situations that you have in these nationalistic movements, and they continue to be out there. And anytime you get into nationalism, I've debated many times with people, it's a very troublesome situation because what do you base your nationalism on? And this whole American First program is a nationalist program. In fact, DJ Trump called Cohen after he left a globalist. Now, this is the President of the United States. This is not V.I. Putin speaking there. There's another poll conducted by John McLaughlin, a veteran post affiliate with the Republican Party, who has advised DJ Trump and the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu in the past. According to 52% of the respondents were not convinced that Trump was doing enough to protect the U.S. and its allies from Russia. Well, that's an old thing. In the later part, the canned part here, there is, I believe, Gershom from the Washington Post talks about that, and how it has come out now. The Republican Party has become the party from the party of tariffs to a different type of party. The poll was conducted by Joel Rosenberg, an author and evangelical activist residing in Jerusalem, who recently published a new political thriller on the U.S.-Russian relationships and Kremlin conspiracy. I saw that somewhere. I'm not sure where. I haven't read it. I won't read it. Anyway, highly supportive of Trump, no less than 39%, said they were not convinced Trump understands the threat posed by. Again, that's an anti-Russian situation there. That is out of old American foreign policy, won't last here. Now, from the Washington Post, the headline is here, Putin condemned for saying the Zionist thing, and I went here to Haaretz to get the news. In other words, some groups compared a statement to anti-Jewish myths that helped inspire the Holocaust. No doubt about that. This whole fake news thing, we'll get to it in a minute. Lupin Press said we did something on it. Is the same thing Hitler went around talking about. And it is very dangerous because this type of ammo in the hands of various people out there, and this is where the American Jewish Committee also compared Putin's comments to the Elders of Zion, a fabricated document published in Russia in 1903 that claimed Jews were plotting to take over the world and that helped fuel the violence against Jewish people across Europe, evidently influencing Adolf Hitler's plan for the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism in Russia goes back hundreds of years. Jews have few rights under the Tsar, and no doubt about that. But in the old Soviet Union, many more rights said. His own became a scene of a new horror when Joseph Stalin launched purge of Jews and other minorities, including Tatars, Crimean Tatars, who Putin and also might have been behind the U.S. election. Now, that's a fabrication there. Joe Stalin did not purge Jews there. If they're talking about Trotsky, who Trotsky was Jewish. But anyway, we won't go into that because another long history there. But this is sparked. Anytime you have nationalistic parties, as in Poland, in various places, you are going to have this type of behavior. And this type of behavior in Poland, blaming the Jewish people who were exterminated of perpetuating the Holocaust. Poland, very anti-Semitic operation there. And this is one of the things the media is not able to deal with, because in the Kelly interview, the old anti-Russian views, the Cold War views, no longer go. And you hear this in the canned part we have. This is from Face the Nation. We also have the Elizabeth Warren interview, and I don't know if we'll get all these things in or not. I think we will, by Chuck Todd over at Meet the Press. So we have a lot of things all going here at once. Let me just jump back to what the lead story here is. The Northeaster, I'll get in a minute here. 7 maps predicting how much snow the Northeaster will bring tonight and into Tuesday. After a few days of uncertainty, excuse me, it looks like another powerful Northeaster is indeed on its way. National Weather Service has issued an expanded winter storm warning for the region on Sunday afternoon, forecasting up to 1.5 feet of snow, potential blizzard conditions in much of the eastern part of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth. Yes, we're confident it's going to snow. That's the Service Bureau in Boston tweeted that out. Low-end scenario would be 2 to 4 inches. The storm is expected to hit late Monday night and continue into Tuesday. Snowfalls of 1 to 2 inches an hour. Strong winds, that's what you had in Nor'easter. And in southwest Mass, wet, pasty snow. That's also occurred in other parts of the country, too. It's been a predictable pattern, but a little bit different, obviously, in the Commonwealth. I'm looking at a map here. This is from the National Weather Service here in various parts of the Commonwealth and how much snow they will receive. So we're looking at, let's see, in Boston, 12 plus inches there, much better idea on Monday. These things do change, so we'll have to wait and see. Believe it or not, there's still an adjustment here, but the current thinking for Tuesday, a blizzard-like conditions, drifting snow, reduced visibility with 1 to 3 inches per hour. That's from News 7 in Boston, News 25 Northeaster to edge closer to a classic track south of Nantucket. That is old basic news there. NBC 10 in Boston also. More exciting than the forecast, Tiger Woods is going to 18 or 1 behind anyway. Now for Tiger and the snowfall. Tiger had his own difficulties going on here. And let me just jump around, and this is the Elizabeth Warren. This is Boston.com. Contentious interview. This is by Chuck Todd. It wasn't the full Ginsburg, but Senator Elizabeth Warren did a rare tour of morning talk shows on Sunday as she continued her campaign against the bank deregulation bill, which is expected to pass the Senate, no doubt about it. The Massachusetts Democrat appeared on the State of the Union, Fox News Sunday, and Meet the Press. We'll have Meet the Press here. All 3 interviews touched on roughly the same subject matters. However, the senator was pressed particularly hard by this Chuck Todd, who's an opportunist, when Warren said Trump is handing North Korea, Democratic Republic of Korea, the prize when asked about a recent announcement that the president, DJ Trump, will meet with Field Marshal Kim Jong-un sometime in the coming months. She worried that the Republican president may be out of his depth when it comes to complex negotiations. There, I see our president. I want to see our president succeed, but if he succeeds, America succeeds. The world is safer, no doubt about that. Warren noted that Trump wasn't the first president to try to get invited to give an invitation to a face-to-face meeting, and said that to accept it without something in return, such as verification. They all have verification. This is one of the things that the Face the Nation panel also talked about. But one has to understand, in 2018, as far as the technology is concerned, the technology is present to verify most of the program. Now, obviously, you don't verify all of the program because things can be hidden, but you 85 to 90% you can verify, and they've done this in the past. They understand the regiment, they have been to the Democratic Republic of Korea, and they understand where the sites are. So that you don't really have to worry about. And as far as being understaffed there, well, on the Korean Peninsula, in that part of the world with DJ Trump's State Department, doesn't really matter. What it basically means is these meetings themselves are summits are pro forma, and the heavy lifting will be done by other people as they move past that period. Still said announcing the meeting was a win for the Korean side. Well, no doubt about that, but you have to understand that in the American politic, it was a win for DJ Trump also. Because what Trump has illustrated here, he'll go around telling people, don't worry about Trump being quiet about it. He was talking to this redneck audience in Pennsylvania, and they booed some, and he got them calmed down when they understood what he was doing. But this is the influence of Wilsonian foreign policy, and this is where the wider discussion is, and this is what Elizabeth Warren does not understand, that racist policy has to die, and it will die. They will improve upon it, but as a likelihood of the two parties in Korea, the Republic and the Democratic Party on the two Koreas, so to speak, as they move closer and closer together, eventually in a matter of years, the U.S. troops will be withdrawn. They don't need to be there. That's why we have cruise missiles and things of that nature to take care of quote-unquote invasions. That will not happen. So in other words, we are moving along. How fast this moves is very hard to say. But let's say, for instance, if there is a 5-year deal that would outlast DJ Trump's first term, and if he's reelected, he would be reelected on the coattails of Field Marshal Kim Jong-un. He's very smart about this, and at the same time with his jobs program, that is a little bit different. But many presidents like DJ Trump start out, and G.W. Bush did, as domestic policy presidents, end up making their mark in foreign affairs. And we'll see. Not sorry about calling out Democrats. Well, she should call out Democrats that a sellouts outrage that the senator called out the Pacific 16 members of her party who joined Republicans to move forward in the bill. Warren reiterated that she owes nothing to those who support the bill. She sees as a giveaway, no doubt about that. It would treat a large bank with billions of dollars as a community bank. It is a sellout. Look, I don't understand how anyone in the U.S. could vote for a bill that's going to increase the likelihood of taxpayer bailouts, she said, adding that the legislation could lead to more discriminatory, and in fact it will. The discriminatory lending practices is estimated to increase the risk of another taxpayer bailout. This is a Democrat, a Republican, a blue state, a red state, she continued. I think we can do better as a country, we do better as a Congress, when we are there to fight for working people, not for Wall Street bankers. And she even criticized some members of her own party. She announced last week that she was donating $5,000 from her personal campaign to every Democrat state organization. So the big question here, will Elizabeth Warren run in 2020? Well, 2020 is 2 years away, and the landscape could change. Another Massachusetts, the governor there is thinking of perhaps Governor Patrick of running himself. So there's a lot of people will be running in 2020, but it would depend on the objective conditions. I'm not running for the president of the United States, she said, using her previously present tense denial. I'm running for the Senate. Ooh-ha. Anyway, and there's also the question of her being an Aboriginal or not. Would she take a DA test? She said, I know who I am. A recent editorial from the Berkshire Eagle, who the hell they are, some right-wing organization. Take a DNA test. Well, the problem is there, where she grew up, out in the red state of Oklahoma. Many of the Europeans there are part Indian, as they call it, or Aboriginal. So not be surprised if that's not in her DNA. She has, from stories now, Todd tried to compare that to his redneck relatives, claiming they were kin to Robert E. Lee. Well, again, every redneck in the South, I'm assuming they were in the South, and some of their relatives claimed that they were related to Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, or who in the hell they were related to, and turned out to debunk it, I should say. Well, yeah, this is a group is being injured every day, she said, and we need to bring some attention to it, and we need to put some resources on it. We need to make a change. It's pivotal to her recent focus on addressing issues that disproportionately affect Native American communities, as well as Trump's insensitivity to the subject. I know who I am, she said, adding that she never used her heritage to gain any sort of advantage or special benefits. Her former colleagues have backed her up on that point. Well, she was teaching at Harvard there, and I think they tried to say that she was in some sort of program. Because what happens is when you fill out various questionnaires, you can list yourself as anything you want to list yourself as. There is no DNA test to prove if you're Native American, or she could have said that she was multiracial. In fact, she could take a DNA test and find out African American was somewhere in her family tree. She talked about that very much in Oklahoma, but that's not unusual. I mean, many people have taken those tests and found out that all kinds of people are in their family tree over hundreds of years. So that's a waste of time. Anyway, I was reading the PI earlier. Fake news smear takes hold amongst all politicians at all levels. This is from the PI. This is an Idaho lawmaker urged her colleagues to submit entries for her fake news awards. The Kentucky governor tweeted fake news to dismiss questions about his purchase of a home from a supporter. An aide to the land commissioner in Texas used the phrase to downplay the significance of his boss receiving donations from employees of a company that landed a multi-million-dollar contract. DJ Trump's always talked about fake news out here, and this lady in Idaho, nonetheless, from the Idaho Statesman, we've used them. That's in Boise, Idaho. Rhonda Patz said it's ridiculous for anyone to assert that it would publish a story if it knew it contained falsehoods. They have a very good reputation there. The winner of the contest, it turns out, will be announced at the end of Sunshine Week, an annual focus by the national news media on government transparency and the importance of a free press, which these people are trying to do in reverse. The Statesman has a long-standing reputation as a reliable paper record going back 154 years, and our standard for accuracy and fairness has never been challenged. She said in the statement, the allegations of fake news are just unjust attacks on a free press. Gladdings used the term herself last year to dismiss a report from another newspaper suggesting she had been unqualified to run for office because she was claiming a homeowner's exemption outside the district. She said she submitted the paperwork to prove the break was legitimate. Oh, boy. This is usually what happens to these characters here. Media researcher Craig Silverman helped popularize the term back in 2014 as a label for completely fabricated stories written and sponsored by individuals seeking profit. Now, that was who got the thing out. The news media, he's now the news editor of BuzzFeed. You've heard of BuzzFeed. So Silberman wrote that political figures are manipulating social media to literally brand real things as false and manufacture reality for their followers. Politicians who have used the term in recent months responding to news reports. The governor of Maine, you no doubt about that, New Mexico candidate, Georgia Secretary of State, the vice chair of Trump's now disbanded voter fraud panel. You would expect that kind of thing. A California school board president recently used the term to attack a journalist investigating the area's high rate of teenage pregnancies and his policies on sex education. So nothing new here. These are people, our members, many of whom work for small news outlets, are bearing the brunt of these unwarranted attacks, and it's completely unfair. These are people who are serving the community. This is from Rebecca Baker, President of Society of Professional Journalists. Some are just ignoring it. Others are fighting back. Baker suggested journalists respond to attacks by showing their work as much as possible, by sharing audio, video documentation that backs up their story. She wonders whether the term is starting to lose its clout from overuse. Well, no. This is part and parcel of the polarization of politics right now, she says. Well, it's a little bit deeper than that. It gets in the situation here. This is also from the PI here. New beer aims to keep women safe in the back country. She swells the breakers of yeast and grain to perfect flavor profiles. On the weekend, when she can, she examines layers of snow in the backcountry so she and her friends can ski safely. Now she has combined beer and her passion for the backcountry to make sure women are safe on their skis. This is a very good article here. Proceeds from the beer will fund free avalanche education for women, which is a good idea in itself. Avalanche education can be expensive. Entry-level courses start at a few $100. Didn't know that. And Norman says that there are also social barriers. A lot of women rely on male companions to make decisions for them, especially in the backcountry. I know personal experience, you get in some trouble there. She found Snowpack Ale at the Fremont Brewery in Seattle. You can find it there, or at Mountain Music there in Crystal Mountain on Sunday. So this is the beer here. Her name is Kristen Norman. Brainchild is a Snowpack Ale. You see a picture of her down here. We won't spend a lot of time on Stormy Daniels, but she's evidently taped a segment she did with CBS News 60 Minutes, but there could be an injunctive situation there from Trump's lawyers. But there's some argumentation there. We'll do this in a later program. We've covered everything. We'll get to March Madness now as we roll along here. Here we go. We'll start with the tournament here. The tournament starts Monday night. Radford and Long Island. Radford is favored 67-33. And then we have UCLA and St. Bonaventure. UCLA 54-48. This is from The 538 site that's now at ESPN. So these are some of the projections now on the 14th. We'll get to these. Texas Southern in North Carolina Central. Texas Southern 58-42. And Syracuse and Arizona State. Syracuse 59-41. And let's move on here to March 15th. This will be the first round. And Rhode Island is favored 58-42 over Oklahoma. Duke 96-4 over Iowa. And Kentucky and Davidson, Kentucky 76-24. Arizona in Buffalo, Arizona 85 there. Tennessee and Wright State, it's all Tennessee 91 there. The University of Miami 60-40 over Loyola. Houston and South Dakota, whatever it is. Anyway, I think that's what it is. 71% favor there. Michigan and Montana. Michigan is 89. Gonzaga and whatever this is. I think it's the University of North Carolina, Greenville. Gonzaga 92% there to win. Ohio State and South Dakota State 77% for Ohio State. Texas Tech and Sarah Austin, I think it is. Anyway, Texas Tech at the Red Raiders 89% probability there. Kansas and Penn. Kansas at 95. Seton Hall and North Carolina State, it's all Seton Hall at 63. Virginia Tech and Alabama, 59 of that. That's the first round. That'll be on March 15th. This is the rest of it here. Texas A&M is favored over Providence. The Friars at 58-42. UNC at 97 to Lipscomb anyway. Creighton and Kansas State. Creighton at 59% and Kansas State at 42%. Florida State at 61 and Missouri at 39. Purdue at 98% favor. Butler at 60-40 over Arkansas. Michigan State at 92 over Bucknell. Clemson and New Mexico State, I think. Clemson at 62% there. Wichita State at 91% over Marshall. West Virginia and Murray State, it's all West Virginia at 84. Auburn and the University of Charleston. Auburn's at 80% favorite there. Cincinnati is at 93% over Georgia State. Texas and Nevada. Texas at 60, and then we have Virginia at 98% here. That's the first round. That'll be on March 16th next week. And let's see. We'll go to the second round. We'll try to go to the second round. Hopefully. Yeah. Well. We'll have to continue this at a later date. Anyway, nonetheless, let's go to the NBA. That was on a Sunday. The Raptors were at the Knicks. The Raptors 132 to 122 for the, wait a minute here. 106 for the Knickerbockers. The Bulls and the Hawks in Atlanta. Bulls 129 to 122. The Warriors and Timberwolves. Timberwolves won a game here, 109 to 103. The Jazz and the Pelicans. Jazz 116 to 99. The Kings and Nuggets in Denver. Nuggets 130 to 104. The Rockets and Mavericks in Dallas. Rockets 105 to 82. The Pacers and Celtics in Boston. Pacers 99 to 97. Close game there. The 76ers and Nets in New York, 76 120 to 97. And finally, the Cavaliers were out in Los Angeles. Lakers 127 to 113. On to Major League Baseball. We took in a couple of games yesterday. The Orioles and Red Sox. Orioles 7-3. Atlanta and the Tigers. Tigers 6-3. The Cards and Nationals 4-3. Nationals. Oh, Cardinals. Excuse me. The Yankees and Marlins. Marlins pull that one out 7-5. The Twins and Rays, Twins 6-5 in that contest. The Pirates and Blue Jays. Pirates shut the Blue Jays out 5-0. The Astros and Mets. Astros 5-2. D-backs and White Sox. White Sox 6-5. The Brewers and Cleveland. Brewers 5-4. And Cleveland and the Royals. They had evidently a two-score day. Cleveland 3-1 over the Royals of Kansas City. The Cubs lost today. Oakland Athletics 7-2 over the Cubbies. And the Rangers and Angels. Angels are 4-3. The Reds and Mariners. Reds 6-5. The LA Dodgers and Rockies. Dodgers 13-7. The Phillies and Orioles. Orioles shut out the Phillies. Must have been a two-score day for them also. And a game we tuned into, the Giants and Padres. Giants 5-4. Interesting game there. And on to college ball. I think we'll come up here on the college ball on Monday night. We can get. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. We have Brooklyn and Radford. We already talked about St. Bonaventure and UCLA. That'll be the later game. One is at 6:45 Eastern Time, and the other one is at 9:10 Eastern Time. On we go, finally, to hockey. The Bruins and Blackhawks. Blackhawks 3-1. The Islanders and Flames. The Islanders 5-2 over the Flames. I guess the Flames ran out of fuel. The Stars and Penguins. Penguins pull one off 3-1 over the Stars of Dallas. The Canucks and Coyotes. The Coyotes shut out the Canucks. The Arizona Coyotes and the Vancouver Canucks. Must have changed that one over. Let me just try one more time here on this. We're not able to get the March 17th projection up, but we won't worry about it. Nonetheless, that'll do it for us in the Monday morning quarterback. Stay tuned. V.I. Putin interview with Kelly, and a part of it at least, and Chuck Todd with Elizabeth Warren from Meet the Press. And at the Face the Nation, we have the panel there at Face the Nation talking about the Korean Peninsula and other things, all of DJ Trump. And we'll see you further in the week. We're still working on our open source report. We were hoping to get it up tonight, but we'll see if we get that up tonight. Nonetheless, we'll talk to you next week on the Monday Morning Quarterback from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. You can find us on iHeartMedia, on Stitcher for mobile apps. A lot of people use it. On Spreaker. On YouTube. We're on YouTube. The audio version there. We're going to start correcting some of that and put some video up. And hopefully we'll get back to doing some stuff on live stream here on the Boston Red Network. So we have some things this week we'll in the hopper that we'll finally get to do. And also we encourage you to check out the post office 2018 we did earlier today, and that will of course be an archive for time immemorial. and we have, I believe, one or two other specials on the U.S. Postal Service. They're a very important part of the American society. We talk about Amazon and where they play into the Postal Service of 2018. Have a good week and good day.
He seems to think that in this column I called him a Neanderthal. I did not. I would not. I've been studying Neanderthals. They had great cave paintings. Those paintings spoke of a certain sensibility, a certain artistic complexity. Their tribes were organized. I would not call him a Neanderthal. That would not be fair.
You got low IQ.
Yeah, there you go. You got to stop there, guys. All right. When I come back, it's Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. Welcome back. Is Senator Elizabeth Warren running for president? Here's what she says.
No, I am not running for president. I am not running for president in 2020. I am running in 2018 for senator from Massachusetts.
Many have noted that Warren's comments are in the present tense, as in I'm not technically running for president at this moment, but I may be running for something in the future. Warren has recently been raising her profile in a manner that has some asking not if she's running, but when she will announce. I talked to Senator Warren late yesterday, and I began by asking her what she thinks of President Trump's decision to meet with Kim Jong-un.
I want to see our president succeed, because if he succeeds, America succeeds. The world is safer. But I am very worried that they're going to take advantage of him. And it starts right where you asked this question. And that is, leaders of North Korea for a very long time, the Kim family, has wanted to meet face-to-face with a U.S. president. That is a win for them. It legitimizes, in their view, their dictatorship and legitimizes their nuclear weapons program. Before they get that kind of prize, we should insist that they make some real changes, verifiable changes to their programs.
You know, Senator, the president would say, hey, we've tried it all sorts of traditional ways for 25 years. It hasn't worked, whether it's having the proper country-to-country relationships, or and he's going, you know what, none of that's worked. What's wrong with trying to shake things up?
Look, I'm in favor of shaking things up if you're sensible about it. But the idea of handing them the prize that we're going to, this North Korean dictator is going to be able to show up in the photograph with an American president, that's the prize. That's the part they want.
Mark Warner is one of the original drafters of Dodd-Frank, but you and he are on opposite sides of this legislation that is trying to revoke some provisions in Dodd-Frank that have to do with providing some relief, what he says, for community banks and credit unions, smaller banks. Barney Frank says that this is not going to make a serious dent in Dodd-Frank. Why are you so vehemently opposed to these changes?
If this were just a bill about community banks, I'd be all on board. But I oppose this bill because it's not. And actually, I think Barney opposes it as well.
He does oppose it, but he also said he didn't think it was going to do much damage.
Yeah, but let's talk about that. It takes 25 of the largest 40 banks in America. Those 25 got more than $50 billion in taxpayer bailouts. Nobody went to jail. And it says, let's regulate them as if they were tiny little community banks that couldn't do any damage to the economy. Now, let's be clear. $250 billion bank is not a community bank.
It's not unusual for Democrats to disagree, but some are taking issue with the tone you used to disagree with some Democrats. They were not happy when you sent a fundraising email, and in Politico, anonymous attacks on you, I might grant you, but here's one blind quote. So, you want Dems to win in all 50 states on the condition that senators from North Dakota and Montana agree with the senior senator from Massachusetts on everything all the time? This is the Republicans' dream, which is to see Democrats work across the aisle and Elizabeth Warren kill them for it. How do you respond?
Look, I don't understand how anybody in the United States Senate votes for a bill that's going to increase the likelihood of taxpayer bailouts. This bill also makes it easier for banks that discriminate against people on home mortgages, charges more for African Americans or Latinos than they do for whites, makes it easier to cheat people who buy mobile homes, that those are the kinds of homes they live in. I don't think that a bill like that is good for anybody in America. This isn't Democrats or Republicans or blue states or red states. I think that we do better as a country and we do better as a Congress when we're there to fight for working people and not for Wall Street banks.
If you win re-election this year, are you going to pledge to serve a full 6-year term?
So look, I am not running for President of the United States. I am running for the United States Senate 2018, Massachusetts, woohoo. But let me actually underline a point on this one, and that is we can't just be a party that says, oh, we're paying attention about what happens every 4 years. And I know there's a lot of anxiety, particularly on the Democratic side, about how we are going to deal with Donald Trump in 2020. But right now, this week, the United States Senate is talking about a bill that will roll back protections. We've got the Dreamers. We've got the tax bill that's gone through. We're still fighting to provide health care for everyone. We should be having a gun debate on the floor of the United States Senate. It's not only about the election in 2018, where I think we do need to be laser focused. But so it's about the fights every single day.
I take it as a no.
Those fights, that's where I'm focused.
I take it as a no. You're not pledging to serve your full 6-year term if you win re-election?
I already told you. I have no intention of running for the United States.
But you know, I don't mean to pick on you about this, but you know how many people have said that? You know how many people have said that over the years? 2 years before, and then, of course, have ended up running for president. You see why a lot of people aren't going to believe that answer.
Look, what I'm telling you is that I am in these fights every day for the people of Massachusetts and for the people across this country. Yeah. This government is working better and better and better for a thinner and thinner slice at the top. I am in these fights, and I am in this fight to retain my Senate seat in 2018. That's where I'm focused. That's where I'm going to stay focused. I'm not running for president.
So no pledge, though, on the 6 years?
I am not running for president.
Duly noted. Finally, I want to get you to respond to the Berkshire Eagle editorial. I know you've been asked about it before, but I'll go ahead and put it up for viewers. Were you to test positive, they want you to take a DNA test. Were you to test positive for Native American DNA, it would permanently resolve the issue while possibly shutting down President Trump. Should the test come up negative, it would be an opportunity for the senator to perform an act rarely seen among politicians, an admission of her error, and a full-throated apology to Native American tribes and anyone else offended by her spurious claim. What do you make of that idea?
So let me tell you the story of my family. My mother and daddy were born and raised in Oklahoma. My daddy first saw my mother when they were both teenagers. He fell in love with this tall, quiet girl who played the piano, head over heels. But his family was bitterly opposed to their relationship because she was part Native American. They eventually eloped. They survived the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, a lot of knocks. They raised my 3 brothers, all of whom headed off to the military, and me. And they fought, they loved each other, and most of all, they hung together for 63 years. And that's the story that my brothers and I all learned from our mom and our dad, from our grandparents, from all of our aunts and uncles. It's a part of me, and nobody's going to take that part of me away.
Senator Warren went on to claim that she's never benefited from her Native American heritage. You can see my entire interview with Senator Warren at meetthepress.com. I encourage you to do so. It was quite interesting.
We're Rhett and Link, and we wanted to show you how the director and Senator Gardner made it absolutely clear that the United States feels that we are coming to this from a position of strength because the sanctions have been tough, right? They have hurt. But what's interesting is I think that Kim Jong-un also feels that he's coming to this from a position of strength. He has nuclear weapons. He's demonstrated an ICBM capability. He hasn't demonstrated that he can put them together yet, but he also feels he's coming at this from a position of strength, sitting down with as an equal. So I think that says something about expectations on both sides and whether they can be met or not.
You think this is a reward before anything's been given up?
So I think that North Korea in general and Kim Jong-un in particular put a very high value on being seen as meeting with the President of the United States. It gives him legitimacy both at home and abroad. It's very important to him. He will get that if this happens. He's only given a short-term freeze in missile and nuclear tests, right? I think we could have gotten more for what he really wanted here.
Okay. Well, we need to take a very short break. We have a lot more to talk about with all of you, so stay with us. Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Margaret Brennan, and we are back with our panel of national security experts. Michael Morrell is CBS News senior national security contributor. Jung Pak is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, and David Sanger, of course, is a national security correspondent for the New York Times. Jung, I want to start with you. Do you think these talks will actually happen? North Korea has been silent since President Trump accepted the invitation.
Right. I think that's an excellent point, is that we haven't heard anything from North Korea that these talks have actually been offered or that any concessions or so-called concessions have been offered. All of this is coming secondhand from the South Koreans, who have an interest in making sure that the North Korea-U.S. talks happen. So that said, North Korea is keeping mum, and I'm not surprised about that, given that gives them maximum flexibility on their next moves. And I'm sure that Kim is monitoring all the discussions and debate going on in Washington about whether President Trump should have accepted this offer.
You think this was a bluff, possibly?
I don't know that if it was a bluff, but I can see Kim Jong-un dangling the possibility of its willingness to meet with the president, but then being surprised. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some policy dysfunction from North Korea or a delayed reaction or response from North Korea as a result.
And David, you've covered this before. It's not the first time that an American president has been issued an invitation to Pyongyang or to meet with North Korean leaders. It's the first time that we know of that they said yes, though.
That's right. Well, that's why I think it was so interesting when Director Pompeo said that President Trump had already accomplished more than any past president. And I think on this, the director, with all due respect, was probably just wrong. I mean, President Clinton reached an agreement in 1994 that lasted for about 6 years, but suspended all of their production of nuclear material. President Clinton was offered a chance to go to North Korea to talk about missiles, and in the end he sent Secretary of State Madeleine Albright. That deal fell apart. President Bush had two different sets of agreements with the North Koreans. Both of those worked for a while, but then also fell apart. So it's a little early for a victory lap here. But I do think that the director set a very interesting barrier for President Trump today when he said that this really has to be, in response to your question, stronger than the Iran deal. And in the Iran deal, let's remember what happened. The Iranians... He
was a big critic of that deal.
He was a very big critic of that deal. The president's been a big critic of that deal. The Iranians gave up 97% of their nuclear material. They stopped running and dismantled some of their nuclear facilities. There are a lot of reasons to be critical of the fact that the agreement doesn't last forever. It expires starting in 10 years, and then pieces of it expire in 15 years. But the fact of the matter is, if you could get that out of North Korea, the president would be taking a very big victory lap.
It's a pretty high benchmark to set, Mike.
Yeah, I think in terms of Margaret thinking about what the best outcomes would be here and the worst outcomes, I think the best outcome would be if they meet and they agree on a set of principles by which negotiations would continue at a lower level.
That was Secretary of State Tillerson's proposal.
Exactly. I think that is the best outcome. The worst outcome, there's two of them, right? One of the worst outcomes is a breakdown, is that the meeting doesn't go well and they're sniping at each other afterwards, because where do you go from then? Right? That's the danger here. The other worst outcome is if we take the pressure off in some way, and if we give some sort of sanctions relief for something not very significant, right? Those are the two worst outcomes.
Jung, one of the criticisms is that you do one of these presidential summits at the end, not the beginning of a negotiation. But then I've spoken to officials who said, look, Kim Jong-un's the only person worth negotiating with in North Korea because he's an absolute dictator. So It's a unique policy, but is it the wrong approach?
Yeah, so I'll leave it up to the experts on the policymakers on the policy, but I think that because President Trump has already said yes to this meeting, if it happens, this meeting is too big to fail. And I see multiple dimensions of risk. If Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump don't get along. You heard Director Pompeo say that Donald Trump wants to resolve this issue. Michael Morell, I think, has correctly identified Kim Jong-un's confidence. So if you have two confident leaders coming to the table demanding things of each other, they're not going to get along. But the other side is that if they do get along and somehow Donald Trump, Mr. Trump, thinks that he's getting a win from Kim Jong-un, and that we have this convergence of a U.S. president who's suspicious of alliances in general, that he might be willing to trade away the alliance for some sort of win for the United States, such as no ICBMs, for example. So there are different ways of risk, but I think it's all in our interest for this meeting to succeed.
The ranks of the State Department are thin right now. That's well known. So who should be leading the negotiations here?
I think it has to be somebody. If this person isn't already in position, it has to be a special envoy with the explicit confidence of the White House and the president himself to either run the advance team to make sure that Kim Jong-un actually said what he is reported to have said, and
because this is all secondhand through the South Koreans,
and to manage the process after the fact, after the summit, if it happens.
David, this is all through the South Korean telling of what happened during this dinner, 4-hour dinner in Pyongyang last week. I mean, it was certainly struck me as unusual to have a foreign official make this announcement of the president's schedule. How do you sort of digest what seems to be a decision without a policy process?
Well, first of all, that wouldn't be the first time in the Trump administration that we saw that happen. What you might have expected is that President Trump would have heard this, said, let's go back and confirm this, do some of the back channel work that Secretary Tillerson has said he has developed with the North Koreans to confirm that the North Koreans are offering exactly what the South Koreans said they were offering, and then try to figure out the modality in which you do this. I think if you looked at the photographs that were taken in the Oval Office when the president was meeting the South Korean delegation, it seemed to me that when he said he would go ahead and do this, he was surprising his Secretary of Defense and his National Security Advisor. Yes, pretty clearly.
And he accepted on the spot.
And he certainly surprised his Secretary of State, who was traveling in Africa at the time. That gets you to the next big question on this, which is, has the president thought very much about what the United States is willing to give up in these negotiations? Because if we've learned anything from them, and Margaret, you and I covered the Iran negotiations for a long time, there's a lot the U.S. is going to have to go give here. If Kim Jong-un is actually willing to denuclearize, that may be worth a lot. But we also know that the North Koreans have made it very clear they never plan to denuclearize. And what they do plan to do, what they say, is to be regarded as a nuclear power. So we'd have to think hard. Would we be willing to pull all of our troops out of South Korea? Would we be willing to stop all of the exercises that have gone on over the years? That could get at this erosion of the alliance that everybody's so worried about.
So the South Koreans, you would say, might need to be in the room. The Japanese, do they need to be in the room? Can this be just direct U.S. and North Korea?
So I think the negotiations, right, should include the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Russians, right? They all need to be part of this. It's very, very important to keep our alliance structure together, the South Koreans and the Japanese, not only because of North Korea, but because of China as well. I mean, here we have Japan, right, who got slapped twice this week, you know, on aluminum and steel once, and then on being surprised on this meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. That is an extraordinarily important relationship. It has to be managed. It wasn't managed this week.
And the U.S. not only is hitting Japan with those tariffs, but possibly South Korea, and there's a free trade deal discussion that's not really going very far right now either, Jung. I mean, are there already cracks in this alliance?
I think alliance management is pretty difficult to do, and I think given the national priorities of both the United States and with South Korea, that there are bound to be cracks and fissures in the relationship. That said, it doesn't look good when we're dealing with the North Korea situation, and the president is talking about trade.
All right, we have to leave it there. But I'm sure we're going to be talking much more about this over the coming months, particularly if we see that meeting in May.